I'm Glenn Garvin, Chief Servant Officer, Life Center Church. Glad to have you with us. We're in a brand new series for the month of November 2023, talking about gratitudes. And in this whole idea, we're looking at pausing and slowing down and just taking the month of November to have it be what it's supposed to be. Kind of a pause, kind of a reflection, just looking at this idea of being thankful and being grateful. But to do that, I believe I've got to adjust my attitude. And so there is the series name, Gratitudes, because it's attitudes of gratefulness. You know, God's economy is fueled by blessing God and blessing others. Psalm 103:1 reads this: "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name." Well, think about this. What is it like to have a perfect day, a perfect family, a perfect relationship, a perfect community of believers? Sounds impossible, right? How often do I think about having the perfect life? What if I told you that it may have more to do with our perceptions and our persistence to find and focus on our own attitudes of gratitude, our gratitudes. I can imagine this hits a nerve in many of us who are hardcore realists, right? Realism is the world of dark and dangerous things where someone is always out to get my parking space, my place in line, or my peace of mind. I have to confess, right? Hi, my name is Glenn, and I'm addicted to negativity. It's been 10 minutes at least since my last cognitive distortion. Cognitive distortion is exaggerated patterns of thought that are not based on facts, and it attacks all of us at one time or another. Can't we just have a moment or maybe a month where thankfulness and gratefulness and contentment are the focus of our American lives? I can tell you this: if I am not comfortable blessing God and blessing others here in this life, I am going to be eternally miserable in heaven. Because like I said right at the beginning, God's economy is fueled by blessing. It's fueled by blessing God and by blessing others. This is the way it works in God's economy and the way he does things. Bless and blessings. There are three words in the Old Testament, 2 words in the New Testament for us to understand how these words alone work with our gratitudes. And it's in these words that we find the basis of how to grow in our gratitude, our gratefulness, our attitudes of gratefulness. In the Old Testament, there are 3 basic words for bless: Barak and Barakah and Esher. These 3 words are a little bit different, but they all have some similarities. The Hebrew people always see blessing as something that comes from God, it returns back to God, and it's liberally distributed to others. It's blessing and coming and going and giving and receiving. And Jewish thinkers explain that to bless means to increase in joy, increase in peacefulness. Jewish scholar Dr. Nathan Lopez Cardoza, he notes this: how wise were the sages of Israel when they instituted the custom of making a blessing on almost anything, whether it was eating, drinking, observing natural phenomenon, or smelling extravagant aromas. They depicted all these activities as nothing less than totally miraculous. I love that quote. To bless and to be blessed is a fundamental part of our relationship with God, as well as relationships with other people. I believe that David, writing in the book of Psalms, captures the how-to on blessing God, both in good times and bad, highs and lows of life. When was this psalm written that I'm going to read? What better yet, why was this psalm written? We're going to find out the background of this. This is out of Psalm 103, and it's verses 1 through 5. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. Who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Well, like I said, do you know when this psalm was written, or better yet, do you know the circumstances of which it was written? Did David write this at a high point of victory after a war, or did he write it when things were just going peachy? No, not at all. On the contrary, this psalm was written after he was confronted by Nathan the prophet, and he was confronted because of his own sin. He had raped Bathsheba, and then because of his power as king, he constructed a massive cover-up that included betraying one of his own mighty men, a man that had gone the lengths with him, thoroughly and loyally giving up everything to his king and the country itself. And David had this man murdered on the battlefield. He was supposed to be leading that battle. David was as king. That's all in 2 Samuel 12:13. That's what's following. So David confesses and he receives the news of God's judgment. This is the context of David's declaration of blessing and of praising God there out of Psalm 103. That's the amazing thing is this had to have been one of the, not at all the highest moments, right? It was one of the lowest moments of sin and shame and guilt. And yet in this moment, David declares he would bless the Lord with all of his soul. David learned that the soul of man was made to praise and bless God, to enjoy his friendship, to delight in his favor, to contemplate God's perfections. How about another famous psalm quoted and memorized to help us? These psalms, actually, they help us remember to let the power of God's word get into our bones and work in our heart and our head. These words can physically frame our gratitudes. This one's out of Psalm 34, 1 through 3. It may sound similar, but it's different, believe me. David declares, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. Sounds pretty amazing, right? You'd think David was riding high, life was good. But what's behind this psalm? Well, I guarantee again, it was not at all a high moment. Actually, it's a very odd moment. David writes this psalm after, not just running from the mad King Saul, but after a desperate moment when he and his mighty warrior friends were starving to death and they had no weapons to defend themselves. In one of the wildest moments written in the Bible of David's life and about David, he barely escaped Saul in 1 Samuel chapter 21. Now, I just got to tell you, you've got to go and read 1 Samuel chapter 21 all by yourself, and then pop over and reread Psalm 34, 1 through 3. So is it in this psalm, right? In this verse out of Samuel, David begs Ahimelech for food, and he begs him for a weapon. Parenthetically, the weapon he receives is Goliath's sword, the very same sword that David used to chop off the giant's head and present it to Saul. Then he and his men run to an enemy king, Achish of Gath. Achish's men recognize David. They said, something's familiar about this guy. Well, isn't he the king? Wasn't he declared the king of Israel? Isn't this the guy that killed our champion Goliath? And they start recognizing David, so much so that David instantly started acting like a mental case. He was scared to death. And David decided, I'm just going to pretend my way out of this. And David started scratching at the doors and drooling all over himself. What a scene. It's all there in 1 Samuel 21. So we have this moment, and it's after this wild experience that David sits down reflecting on what had happened, and he pens this powerful psalm in chapter 34. Is it coincidental that David writes, his praise will always be on my lips, thinking back on him drooling on himself to escape harm? Come on, folks. I want the Word of God to fill me and center me and lift my gratitudes out of my negativity, out of my cognitive distortions of whatever is happening in my life. I want to let God's praise rise within me. I want to let my voice lift up blessings to God in the midst of all my circumstances. And when I see these Psalms and I memorize these Psalms and I know their background, I believe that all has an effect on me and where I'm at currently in my life. Let's hop over to the New Testament. We talked about different words in the Old Testament. Now we want to quickly look at New Testament words for bless and blessing as well. In the New Testament, the first word we want to look at is makarios. And in the notes, you're going to see what this means. Basically, makarios means to make happy. Blessing means, in this word, it means just to make someone happy, to make the situation better, to make it happy. Okay? 2 is eulogy, eulogio. We get the word eulogy from it, so that's why I said it like that. And that's also in my notes too. Basically, this means to speak good words. In the New Testament, there are these primary two Greek words translated as blessing. One of them carries the meaning of happiness. These are mentioned in the Beatitudes. Matthew 5 and Luke 6 describe this happy state of those who find purpose and fulfillment in God. And eulogio, right, eulogy, focuses more on good words or good reports that others give of someone and describes that blessing that we may say over people. Matthew 26:26, all of these other things that follow. It's these practical words over others of goodness that we would speak. So these are the two words in the New Testament. Jesus, he uses the word makarios, happy, in this famous passage out of Matthew 5:3-11. And basically what's going on is Jesus, as he is teaching the crowds, he's blowing the minds of his listeners because he describes happy life, the happy life, compared to what they believed about happiness was all about. And in this comparison, oh my goodness, it is mind-blowing. Matthew 5:3-12. Jesus says this, and I'm just going to quote part of it. You need to go back and read it for yourself. You'll be happy when or if. And here's the description that Jesus says, happiness, right? This is what gives us happiness. When you're poor in spirit, when you mourn, when you're humble, when you hunger and thirst for justice, when you're merciful, you're pure in heart, you work towards peace, when you are persecuted because you are doing right. And bonus, when people insult you, when people persecute you, when people lie about you and speak all kinds of evil about you because of me, Jesus says he defines happiness from this list. This is the reason to rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, is what Jesus Christ says in his own words, the red letters, right? Do you see the immediate irony in this list of happiness? You realize that Jesus' job of flipping our world, our culture, our truth back to God's reality and what his kingdom looks like seems absolutely crazy. It is totally counterintuitive. That list looks like my worst life, not my best one. These be attitudes are exactly what clashes with our me attitudes. You see that, right? You see this list and you're like, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that to define happiness, but Jesus said it does. This happiness list only works in God's economy, God's way of real life here and now, but also in preparation for eternity. God knows what he's doing. When Jesus declared, blessed are those who, he was giving us the perspective and challenge of adjusting our own gratitudes towards God and towards others. You've got to understand this list, this countercultural truth, to even begin to understand how God wants us to bless others. You see the counterintuitiveness in the way things work. Jesus uses the other word for bless, right? Eulogio, eulogy, when he says that this isn't just about God blessing us, it's also making us happy in how we turn and bless others, speaking good words over them. An amazing story right out of Luke 6:27 and 28. Here he says, Jesus says this, but to you who are willing to listen, I say, and you'll be familiar with this. He says, do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. He doesn't say to make people you curse happy. He doesn't say to be the people that curse you, make them happy. He doesn't say, oh yeah, you got to make them happy. It's your responsibility. They just finished cursing you, right? He says, no. The response is to speak good words over those that speak bad words over you. Now that's quite a turn, right? Speak good words over them when they are speaking bad words over you. You understand this is a verbal turn the other cheek exchange. It's just like Jesus to completely turn these things around. You know how hard this is, especially in the bitter heat of words flying through the air like knives aimed at your heart. You feel your blood pressure rising. You feel your heart rate going out of control. You feel your mind spinning. You're in this enormous amount of emotional activity where maybe eyes and ears are all on you, and somebody that is yelling, they're cursing at you. Wow. Who are these individuals deserving of our good words? Yikes, right? They're our enemies. The Apostle Paul takes Jesus' words and gives the church the same lessons and gratitudes that we're even learning today. This one's out of Romans 12:14, and you're going to read this in the screen here, but also on your own. Paul says the same thing. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Now, I want to let you know here, Paul isn't saying make them happy. He's saying speak good words to them over and above compared to the curses they just hurled at you. Isn't that amazing? Both words that are translated there, bless, are both eulogy. The other one is the Apostle Peter, similarly, summarizes it really well in 1 Peter 3:9. He says this, don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That's what God has called you to do, and He will grant you His blessing. Peter takes it even further. Again, both of these words for blessing are not make happy, but instead speaking good words over them. And in another sense, you see this picture of what goes around comes around. Bless others. God blesses you. This full picture, both from Old Testament and New Testament, of this word blessing in helping us deal with and adjust our gratitudes, our attitudes of gratitude. In this gratitude series, it's all about helping us take a month to pause and slow down, to be thankful, be grateful, to be content with what we already have. But also, instead of just waiting for moments of gratefulness to just come to us, we can be proactive in attitude and action. We can make moments of gratitude happen. God, help us by being attentive and engaged in your word to work on our gratitudes this month. To not only see your blessings towards us, but to return blessings to you and to others. I want to close this from a famous blessing, right? This is to say farewell for now, see you later, and it's done very often in services at the end where people are going out. And this is out of Numbers, and I want to pray this over you. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and the Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. May it be so today, this week, this month, in your gratitudes. God bless you. Let me know how it's going. Send me an email. Tell me some stories. Help me, give me feedback just on what's going on in your life. Glenn@lifecenter.com. May the Lord bless you. Bye-bye.